Reputation. Our source material says it's pretty much the cornerstone of power. If you have a good one, you can win before the fight even starts. But without it, you're vulnerable from every angle. So let's dive into how a good name can be the most powerful weapon you have, and really the only shield that truly matters. So, let me ask you this. How could a tiny force of just 100 soldiers beat an army of 150,000 without even knocking an arrow? Sounds like a trick question, right? But it's not. It's a real story from history that shows you the absolutely terrifying power of a well-built reputation. Okay, so picture this. We're in ancient China during the War of the Three Kingdoms. General Chuko Liang has just sent his main army off on a mission, leaving him in a small town with basically a skeleton crew. And then he gets the worst possible news. Scouts ride in saying an enemy force, 150,000 strong, is marching right for them. This isn't a battle. It's a massacre waiting to happen. So what does Liang do? Panic? Try to surrender? Nope. He does something that sounds completely insane. He orders the flags taken down, tells his men to throw the city gates wide open, and then has his tiny group of soldiers go hide. Then he himself puts on a robe, climbs up on the most visible part of the city wall, sits down, and just starts calmly playing his lute as this massive army rolls up. The enemy general, a guy named Sima Yi, gets to the city and sees this bizarre scene. He immediately recognizes Liang, a man who has a terrifying reputation as the sleeping dragon, a master of tricks and deception. And Yi just freezes. His mind is screaming, this has to be a trap. The fear of what Liang might do is so much more powerful than what he can actually see. He's not willing to risk it. He orders a full, immediate retreat. And that right there is the whole point. Chuko Liang didn't lift a finger. His reputation did all the heavy lifting. It created this powerful illusion. It planted fear directly into his enemy's mind, and it won him a victory that should have been completely impossible. That's the kind of power we're talking about. So we've seen how reputation can be an incredible shield, but what about as a sword? Turns out it can be an even more potent weapon. If you can attack and damage an opponent's name, you can take them down without ever having to face them directly. And for a masterclass in this, we got to look at the one and only P.T. Barnum. Early in his career, P.T. Barnum was, well, a nobody. He had his sights set on buying the American Museum in Manhattan, but the owners basically laughed him out of the room. They sold it to a more established competitor, and they made it crystal clear why. The other guy had a reputation, and Barnum had zip. So how did Barnum handle this rejection? He went on the attack. He went after his rival's reputation. And what's fascinating is how his tactics changed over time. When he was the unknown underdog, he used brute force, spreading nasty rumors that made his rival's stock plummet and completely killed the deal. But years later, once he was a famous showman himself, his methods were way more surgical. He used ridicule, staging a parody of his rival's show that just made them look silly. And you know what? It was just as devastating. You have to appreciate the genius here, especially that first tactic, when you're the little guy. The power of doubt is an incredible weapon. See, when Barnum spread those rumors, he put his rival in a total lose-lose situation. If they came out and denied everything, they'd just look defensive and, well, kind of guilty. But if they ignored the rumors, the doubt would just keep growing in the public's mind. It's a perfect psychological trap. Okay, so we've seen reputation as a shield, and we've seen it as a sword. But how do you actually build and maintain your own? Let's look at another story that shows just how incredibly fragile a good reputation can be. All right, back to ancient China, to the court of Wei. There was this courtier, Suxia, who was the ruler's absolute favorite. He had this reputation for being loyal and just wonderful, and because of that, everything he did was seen in the best possible light. For instance, one time, he gave the ruler a peach that he had already taken a bite out of. And check out the ruler's reaction. He wasn't disgusted. He was flattered. He saw it as this incredible sign of love and affection. Haksha's amazing reputation was like a filter that turned a pretty gross act into this beautiful gesture. But fast forward a bit. Jealous rivals started whispering in the ruler's ear, and they destroyed Suxa's reputation. The ruler's love soured into hate, and now, when he remembers that exact same incident with the peach, he says it with pure anger. The act didn't change at all, not one bit, but the reputation surrounding it did. And, well, That changed everything. So how do you manage this incredibly powerful but super fragile asset? Our source material lays out a pretty clear game plan. First, you've got to build your reputation on one single outstanding quality. Make that your trademark. Then, you have to guard it like your life depends on it. And if it does get attacked, whatever you do, don't look desperate when you defend it. Desperation always looks like guilt. And finally, remember that reputations can rub off on each other, so associating with respected people can help you build or even repair your own. But, and this is a huge but, there's a serious warning label here. When you're the one on the attack, you have to be so careful. If you go too far, if you look too cruel or too vicious, you can end up destroying your own reputation in the process. And there is no better example of this than the insane rivalry between Thomas Edison and Nikola Tesla. Thomas Edison, the icon of American invention, was deeply threatened by Nikola Tesla's superior AC technology, so he launched one of the nastiest smear campaigns in history. He publicly electrocuted dogs and cats to prove AC was dangerous. He even championed AC for use in the first electric chair, but the whole thing backfired spectacularly. The first execution was an absolute horror show, and the public was disgusted. In his obsessive quest to ruin Tesla's name, Edison ended up tarnishing his own legacy forever. So after seeing all these stories, from ancient generals to 19th century inventors, our source material comes to a pretty stark conclusion about the whole idea of reputation. And the final verdict is, well, it's absolute. There's no getting around this one. Reputation is everything. You simply can't opt out of this game. If you aren't actively shaping how people see you, you're just letting other people define your reputation for you. And that, my friends, is a terrible position to be in.
So the big takeaway is this. Just like you work to control your own destiny, you have to take conscious, deliberate control of your reputation. You have to treat it like a tool, like a treasure, a vital part of your power that you have to build on purpose and protect with everything you've got.
And that really leaves us with one last question for you to think about. We all have a reputation whether we built it intentionally or not. In a world where what people think they see so often becomes the reality, what is that one single quality that your reputation is currently built on? And maybe more importantly, is it the one you actually chose for yourself?